Welcome back to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Renee Coolbaugh. And Renee is a native of the Philadelphia region whose journey has taken her to Boston, back to Philadelphia, to Washington, D.C., and ultimately to Baltimore, where she now resides with her husband, Peter, and their beloved clowder of cats. A lifelong multitasker, Renee spent her youth immersed in a whirlwind of activities from marching band and cheerleading to a variety of part-time jobs, developing strong time management skills that continue to serve her today. Not long after she and Peter married, he was diagnosed with late-stage multiple myeloma and kidney failure. Renee became his primary caretaker through years of treatment and a successful stem cell transplant. In 2025, Renee faced her own health challenge when she was diagnosed with endometrial and ovarian cancer and underwent surgery and treatment for the same. Outside of her professional and caregiving roles, Renee is a passionate advocate for animal rescue, having fostered and rehomed numerous pets over the years. She treasures time spent with Peter and their cats, enjoys hosting family and friends, and finds joy in crafting creative projects and visits to the beaches of Maryland and Delaware. So welcome to the show, Renee.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Happy to be here.
I am so glad you're here. And for those of you who follow the show, you may recognize Renee's name because we did have Peter, her husband, as a guest on the show several months ago. And he just raved and raved about you being able to take care of him through his entire journey. And then all of a sudden, here we are with your own journey. So I'm very excited to have you on to share a little bit about both roles today, because you've been on both sides of the coin.
Yep, correct.
But first off, so we just spoke before we got on. I did not know that a group of cats was called a clowder. So that's very cool. So tell us how many cats that you actually have in your home right now.
We have 10 right now. Yes. My our oldest one, who was Peekaboo, whose picture is actually behind me, passed away just a few weeks ago. So up until a few weeks ago, we had 11, but he was 18, and faced some health challenges. But yeah, currently 10.
All right. And what are their ages from what to what?
I think we go right now from maybe 5 to 13 is about right. Yeah.
No kittens running around being crazy.
No, they're all fixed. There's no repopulation in this house. And the goal is, to stay at 10 and, under.
Now you talked about in your bio that you fostered numerous pets. Were some of these cats originally fosters that you just couldn't bear to get rid of?
Yeah, I mean, foster might be like a strong word. We tend to find them.
Okay.
And then foster them until we find them homes. Absolutely, some of these were ones that we found and attempted to half-heartedly tried to find them a home, and then ended up, keeping them. Just happened. I'm not quite sure how.
Well, that was wonderful. My husband and I are cat lovers ourselves. We've had cats. I got my own cat when I was 19 or 20. Yeah. And my husband got his first when he was like 21 or 22. And we've had cats ever since. And we're down to our last one. She just turned 21. And other than being deaf and having a little bit of arthritis internally, we just got her checked, and all of her blood levels are stable or good. And we're starting to think she's just going to live forever.
It's amazing. I hope so for you.
We do too. We're not in any hurry for her to go. She drives us crazy, of course, but pets are just such a blessing. And we're always so grateful to have them in our lives.
They are.
All right, Renee, so let's kind of recap a little bit, because for those who didn't listen to Peter's episode, I want you to share a little bit about what it was like being a caregiver. I mean, because you and Peter weren't even really married for very long before he was diagnosed. So take us through a little bit of that role of, being his primary caretaker. I remember him saying that there was a time like he would be in chemo Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then dialysis on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it was just a constant thing. So share with us a little bit about your experience going through all that with him.
Sure. Yeah, it was early on within the first couple of years of our marriage. And I found myself, in the bio you mentioned like time management. I found myself like kind of easily going into the caregiver role in terms of keeping schedules, making appointments, filling out paperwork, and kind of doing all of that. And for me, it was a sense of control over the situation. And also, where I felt I could give the most. Obviously it was an incredibly emotional time, and, he was going through a lot, but I wanted to take as much off of his plate that I could. And those types of things were just felt easy to me and natural to kind of do. And then being there at appointments, of course, and during treatments when I could, again, usually having a notebook or my computer with me, taking notes, being his note taker, asking those questions that maybe he didn't think about, or doing research on my own to come back to questions and things like that. And really letting him like take care of himself, is what I felt like I was doing in that moment, and taking as much of, the other things off of his plate that I could.
Now, were you like, I'm assuming you were working at the same time. So, how, I mean, yes, time management skills, absolutely. But how was that trying to manage, working as well as all of the things that you had to do for him as well?
It,
Not
it
had
was
to do, that you got to do.
right. Yes, yes. So, I mean, it was difficult. I'm not going to say it wasn't, to do that. But fortunately, I was in a role where, I had supportive, kind of employers. And then also, I didn't have necessarily kind of 9 to 5 type of job. So I could work. And, I remember sitting when he had his stem cell transplant, he was in the hospital for, I think it might have been a little over 2 weeks, maybe 12 days, something like that. I remember not being able to sleep and, staying with him and, being in one of those ever so comfy, hospital kind of cot thingies,
Yeah.
but sitting up at like 2 a.m. and doing work.
Oh,
So I was able to kind of use my time management skills and all of that, along with, being able to communicate with, with anyone else affected that about timing and things like that. So absolutely it was a challenge, but, again, I think I thrive in those situations. Sounds kind of maybe crazy, but I found that I was able to do it all.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I always ask this of the caregivers that I talk to, and really want you to stress, like, what did you do that during that time for you? Because we tend to get so much into taking care of the other person and doing all the things that
Yeah.
self-care can oftentimes go by the wayside, and then the caregivers get burned out, and then that's not good for anybody. So did you have any self-care practices or things that you did kind of just for you during that time?
I wish that I could say yes without hesitation, but no. I don't think that I had anything that I was consciously doing. I definitely wasn't thinking about it. I did have, fortunately, people like that were supporting me that thought about that. Peter's sister, for example, would every once in a while just call me and be like, "What can I do?" And I'm not someone that you can easily help because I don't like to ask for help. But she would just come over and, help clean up with the cats. Her husband would take our trash out for us. One time I was just like, she's like, "Do you want me to go to the grocery store?" And again, I'm a little bit of a control freak too. So I wanted to go to the grocery store, but I was like, come with me. Come with me. And let's just talk about something other than Peter. Again, not to take anything away from
No,
his
not
or
at
what he
all.
was going through, but everything that I was doing was about Peter, and that's really all at that time that people were talking to me about for the most part. I guess as I'm talking this through, I did start like a Caring Bridge journal. Um, when he was going through, I can't remember if I started at stem cell transplant or maybe earlier, as a way to minimize like the number of people that were reaching out to me at different times. So I found Caring Bridge. I can't remember how, might have been from a hospital staff or something, but, and I started that, and we started sharing that link to people to be like, here's where you can go for information. Because for me, that having everyone reach out to me was probably the most draining part of the process. That's not the right word, but of everything, of having people constantly ask me and me having to talk about it, was the most draining. So the Caring Bridge was a good way to get the information out there.
And did that seem to help? Did people kind of reach out to you a little less frequently once they had all of that, the information that they could just go to at their own leisure?
They did. My closest people were reaching out to me separately, of course. But the caring, Peter had a lot of people that were concerned and curious. So there were people reaching out that I didn't really know. So that's was kind of the difficulty. But my closest people, to me, were still communicating with me, and I was communicating with them. In addition to reading the Caring Bridge Journal, of course.
Right.
But it definitely lessened it. Yeah.
I mean, hey, anything that can take something off of your plate going
Yeah.
through all this. And now, how long? Because it's been a while. How long was Peter's journey? Like, how long were you just having this primary, like all the time caregiver kind of role?
Yeah, so when he was diagnosed, it was about a year later that he had his stem cell transplant. So it was a year plus then, after stem cell transplant, I would say it was, I mean, we're still on the journey, but
Well,
the
sure.
role has shifted a bit.
Right.
He can take himself to doctor's appointments now. I can read the results. But I would say, I mean, a year and 8 months, 10 months, something like that, where it was pretty constant. Yeah.
And then what would you say to caregivers regarding, your experience, and do you feel like you should have done a little more for yourself based on, what ended up happening to you down the road that we'll get into, or, kind of what's your best piece of advice for caregivers going through this process?
Definitely take care of yourself and think about you. And part of it was me feeling guilty doing something for myself,
Mm,
even if it was going like getting my nails done or something like that. So, it's okay to do that. It's okay. It's not taking anything away from your caregiver role. It's helping you be a caregiver because you need to, be healthy, be strong, be able to focus, in order to be a caregiver. Um, you also need to communicate about things other than, your caregiver role. So, I mean, if you have a hobby, keep doing it. If there's something you like to do, or just go outside, get out of the hospital. If you're in the hospital all the time, and just sit outside, and take in some fresh air. There are definitely things that I wish that I had done, but I still wouldn't change the amount of support and everything that I gave to Peter.
And I hear people say, and it's really true, that a lot of times when you're going through this or in this caregiver mode, people don't want to tell you what's going on with them because
Yeah.
you're so engrossed. And most of them have said, and I don't know if you'll agree, it's like, please tell me about your problems. Give me something else to think about for a little while.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. All right, so let's kind of shift gears a little bit. So, like, how long was it after? I mean, and Peter has multiple myeloma, so it's always going to be a thing. It's not curable, but kind of from the end of this active caregiving role, like, how long was it until you started experiencing symptoms and looked for what was going on with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lifetime it seems, but maybe, gosh, I mean, that was probably 18, 19. 6 years
Okay, so it
later.
was a
So
while.
it was a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. And then kind of take us back to, it hasn't been that long actually, kind of what was going on that you first started feeling like, hey, there's something going on here, and to getting diagnosed.
Sure. So, last December, so December, well, maybe November of 24, I was having some symptoms that I just kind of thought were perimenopause. I didn't really think too much about it. I did a little bit of research online, talked to some friends, I was having some bleeding and just thought it was part of perimenopause. Um, I went to my primary doctor, and we talked about doing some blood work to see if my hormone levels were there for menopause, and that could explain it. She also ordered an ultrasound at that time. And I did the blood work, and she said, I'm not a gynecologist, but I can tell you that the levels look like you're there. So, perhaps it's simply perimenopause. Um, I I can't say necessarily, I did not get the ultrasound right away. Life things, really no excuse. I mean, maybe kind of putting it off, but I continued to have
Well, you were
bleeding.
getting into the holidays too, right? November, December. So don't want
That's
to think
true.
about any of that.
That's true. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Makes me feel a little better. So, I continued to have bleeding, and, had some other, kind of issues. I have a knee issue going on. So, put my attention towards that a little bit. And, was continuing to have bleeding and clotting again, not just kind of became a part of my normal life, if that sounds,
Mhm.
makes sense. So really didn't give it too much concern until April. So I waited, a bit. The holidays are well past, so I don't know what
Okay,
this.
no judgment here.
Right.
We all put off things regarding ourselves and our own
Yeah.
health.
So I had an issue that caused alarm. So I that happened on a Monday. By Friday, I had an appointment with a gynecologist, and an appointment to do my ultrasound and additional blood work. That was Monday. I had the appointments all on Friday, so less than a week. I was able to get in. Um, and I went, I did the ultrasound first thing in the morning. The results weren't in by the time I had my gynecologist appointment. But the blood work, and neither was the blood work actually. But I went and was talking to my gynecologist, and she recommended that she do an endometrial biopsy that day in the office. And it had explained it simply could be perimenopause. She didn't think so at that point. It could be endometriosis, or, it could be cancer. And I remember saying to her when we were wrapping up the appointment, and she said she'd reach out, and I said, okay, well, if I don't hear from you, can I just assume things are okay? And she's like, the look on her face, I was like, I'm going to hear from you. She's like, yes, you are going to hear from me. She's like, this is not normal. And so I would be hearing from her. Fast forward to, gosh, maybe a week. Um, my gynecologist called me and asked if my primary had reached out to me, and she asked that because my primary had scheduled or did the referral for the ultrasound. So she got the results first, but they were passed on to my gynecologist, and my gynecologist, said those words that, sent me immediately into a frenzy, that I had endometrial cancer. And that they also found the ultrasound showed a softball size mass as well, but they didn't know what it was at that point.
Softball
Um,
size?
Softball size,
Like
yes,
that's like
yes,
that's
yes.
pretty big.
Yeah. And then thinking back, I had two incidents in the fall and actually at the end of the year, where I had this incredible pain in my side, like stopped me doing everything. And I don't know, again, I brushed it off. The first one was gone within a few hours. The second one was gone within a day or so. And, so that could have been, there's no way to tell, but that could have been the start of something, that pain. So yeah, so that was the diagnosis. Then it was off to the cancer center, making an appointment with an oncologist and talking to her. My oncologist, I had an appointment within a week. I think I had an appointment. I remember when I first made the appointment, it was for 2 weeks. And then I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this for 2 weeks? Like, think about this and everything. And it seemed like such a long time, but then they had called me back within 2 hours and had an appointment within a week or a week and a half. So I remember feeling like this great relief, but also when she said, like, going to the cancer center, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have to go to that same place that I've been with Peter so many times.
So you were at the same hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Then had the appointment with the oncologist, and we talked about, what the next steps would be. And it was a total hysterectomy was in my future. They would also then remove that mass. They didn't want to do any sort of like biopsy or pulling a piece of it just for like the potential cancer spread. So she said that, in that appointment said, if we can't get you scheduled rather quickly, there's a few drugs that you could take to stop the bleeding. And she gave me that information so I could research. I am a researcher. I don't go into things blind. I think it's part of like the control part of my nature, just needing to know and having the questions and being able to ask. So she gave me the names of the drugs, and I said, I'm just going to wait to see when I'm scheduled before I even look at those. If they can get me in a month, then great. So this is April. They called me to schedule and told me that the soonest was July 23rd. So
oh my gosh.
I know. So again, this whole other panic, like, wait, can I wait? You just told me I have cancer. Can I wait this many months? And I'm like, well, they know what they're doing, but like, I'm like, of course, this whole flood of questions. So I started researching the drugs, and the side effects of those the potential side effects of those, some of them more common than others, to me didn't outweigh, the benefits of just I guess the devil I knew, right? I knew what was happening, the bleeding and, and all of that. And there was there was some potential that like it could slow the cancer, but again, not guaranteed, and all of this. So I decided not to take the drugs, and, did use that 3 months to kind of get, things in order in my household and in my life to potentially be out for at least 2 weeks. In my head and in that appointment, I heard that 2-week recovery time for hysterectomy.
And I'm sticking to it. 2 weeks to the day.
Like 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm just, 2 weeks. That's all. Like I'm going to be back to normal after 2 weeks. And, I also do tend to minimize things when it comes to myself. So, it took me a little while to realize that it was, it was going to be a little more than 2 weeks to recover and to kind of, get my life back to like 100%. So I did put myself on a list for cancellations, if anything comes up sooner, of course. But it didn't. So on July 23rd of 2025, I had a total hysterectomy, and they removed the mass.
So was the mass in your uterus, or was it outside of it?
It was outside of it.
Okay.
And what that mass ended up being was actually my ovary. So I was diagnosed with synchronous endometrial ovarian cancer, meaning I had 2 types of cancer, not a cancer that metastasized.
I just can't imagine having a softball-sized mass in your ovary that
And
you didn't feel it. I mean, people talk about that all the time, the size of their tumors, and it's like,
yeah.
how did you not know that it was there? But I mean, so many people don't.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, I remember when the gynecologist was doing the exam, like an external exam, my uterus was also enlarged, and she was like, do you feel that? And I'm like, no, like not often touching my stomach and feeling, nor do I know what a normal uterus size feels like. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I definitely have like this high tolerance for pain, which I know a lot of people say. I mean, to just give an example, I once had a kidney stone, and thought I pulled a muscle in my back, and ended up in the hospital with sepsis because
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, so a little bit of a high tolerance for pain that's probably lessened as I've gotten older, but it's still there. So yeah, so apparently pretty not common to have two different, two cancers at the same time, especially, endometrial and ovarian.
You're
My
special.
But yeah, my doctor did call me special. um, but she did say when they realized it was my ovary during surgery, her fear was that it had metastasized, that the endometrial cancer had metastasized. And when I had my follow-up appointment with her, I think I realized, and just how lucky I was. That seems silly to maybe to some people to say, but she said if it had been a cancer that metastasized, I would have been looking at months of chemo and radiation.
Right.
Additionally, ovarian cancer is something that is usually found later, at a later stage. Both my cancers were found at stage 1. One was 1A, one was 1B. Had I not had the endometrial cancer, perhaps ovarian would not have been found, early.
Yep.
So that's from my follow-up appointment. It like that totally clicked with me, and I remember just walking out of there feeling incredibly grateful for a number of things, but for my cancer, being grateful for my cancer. First
Well,
cancer.
right. I mean, they do call ovarian cancer the silent killer because
Yeah.
it is symptom free. And the fact that you had a softball, I'm sorry, I keep going back
Yeah.
to this, and it was stage 1B, a tumor that size.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So did they have to go in and take out the rest of your stuff, or did they take out everything the
They
first
took
time?
out everything in
Okay.
that surgery. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So my treatment after that, it was recommended that I do radiation. And I at first I kind of didn't understand. Well, you took everything, but technically they didn't take everything. um, but it was more preventative to decrease the recurrence of the cancers. So I met with a radiation oncologist, and upon again, I did my research. um, um, I ended up doing 3 sessions only of brachytherapy, so targeted radiation,
Now that was that external or internal?
internal.
Okay.
Yeah,
That does not sound like any fun at all.
not really, but I mean 3 sessions, and that was it. I felt again incredibly grateful for 3 sessions. I know that sometimes people are going through radiation treatment for weeks, and longer. Um, so again, grateful for that for sure.
And everything we're clear right now. No evidence of disease. Nothing going on there.
We are. One other thing that my doctor had suggested that I did was see a genetic counselor, for something called Lynch syndrome. It has to do with the MLH1 gene. It wasn't present where it should have been, something like that. I've got notes on it. I've done research. But so I went to a genetic counselor and went through my entire both sides of family history, through parents, grandparents, siblings, cousins, aunts and uncles, and then had testing done to check for Lynch syndrome. I have not received those results back yet. Hope to have them soon. If I do have Lynch syndrome, it makes me more susceptible to a slew of other cancers. The most common, or the most, I guess, prevalent one being colon cancer, which increases my rate of getting that to like 44 to 60%, something like that. So yeah,
Wow,
so that was the most,
that's a big jump.
yeah, that's the most jarring one. But then there's like an entire list of other cancers. So if I do have that, I will have a list of other doctors in my future, and just more. They don't do anything other than more testing, more often. So colonoscopies, endoscopies would be done because it's like bladder cancer, kidney cancer are in there. Gallbladder, had my gallbladder out years ago, so I think I can hopefully cross that one off the
One less
list.
to worry about, right?
Right. So it would just be more testing more regularly. I'd be looking at colonoscopies like every couple of years versus every 10 years. So fingers crossed I don't have to think about that, but that's the lingering, question at this point.
I mean, people say all the things about colonoscopies. Like, it's really not, it's not that bad.
No,
I mean,
I
the
had my,
prep day is the hard day. You're asleep for the colonoscopy, so it
right.
doesn't matter, but
I had my first one last year, and I
yeah.
remember I was so like stressed about it because you just have it build up in your head what it's going to be like. But you're right, the night before I didn't even have to start until like 5 o'clock, so
Right.
I just went upstairs. We're fortunate enough to have like a bathroom in our master bedroom. So Peter and I switched sides of the bed that night because I wanted to be as close as possible to the bathroom. But the next day, yeah, it was a nice nap.
Yeah, exactly. And then you come
Yeah,
home and you can just rest for the day and
right.
and not a big deal
Exactly.
at all. I know.
Hmm.
It is a little interesting the night before though, and
Right.
I had things coming out that like, when did I eat that?
And I think once you know too, right? I mean, I build it up in my head so much about what it would be like. So now I know, and it'll be much
Gotta be
easier.
easy from now on. Yeah,
Yeah.
my husband had his about 3 or 4 months before I had mine, so
Yeah.
kind of
He could
watching
tell you.
him go through
Yeah.
his, and my daughter's had digestive issues kind of most of her life, so she's actually had several, and her
Oh.
first colonoscopy, like it was the Miralax thing, and that she had to just be drinking that all day
Yeah.
long, and so it was a full
Oh.
24-hour process,
Wow.
at like I think she was 12 or 13.
Oh,
I think
wow.
she was 12 going through all that. It was, it was awful, and trying to give
Yeah.
her Jello and, and things that she could enjoy.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I
yeah,
can't imagine. Yeah,
colonoscopy
at
has come a
12.
long way in the last 15 years. Thank God.
That's good.
All right. So you're one of the, I don't want to say the few, because I'm sure that there are many, but one of the few I've had on my show who has done both caregiver and patient.
Mhm.
And I'd like you to talk a little bit kind of about, I mean, we know the difference, but
Mhm.
having experienced both, like just some thoughts of yours regarding both sides, if you have a preference. I mean, they both suck, so it's like you don't want to be
Right.
either one, but just kind of some thoughts about going through both processes, in a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah, I think I slipped into and I felt more comfortable in the caregiver role. As I touched on before, it's really difficult for me to ask for help. So in the caregiver role, I'm driving things. In the patient role, it's people. I don't feel like it's people wanting to do more for you because you were in the patient role. Because not everyone understands. Well, not everyone understands either role, but like I don't know. It's easier to understand patient. They need something. Let's send them a care box. Like I've got let's send them something. Let's make them food. Like something like that. Where caregiver people may not necessarily understand as much. But I also again I touched on it that have this control issue. I'm type A for sure. So in the caregiver role, I felt that there were things I could do to contribute and things that I could keep on track, appointments, things like that. In the patient role, I don't know, I didn't feel as in control, obviously. And I found it hard. Like, I remember when Peter had paperwork to complete, like, I was on it. I did it for him and all of that. My paperwork sat here for like 2 weeks before I even looked at it
Peter's not necessarily the best caregiver.
It's not that he's not the best caregiver. He was fantastic. I mean, he
Right.
was
Just
wonderful.
different, good caregiving in different ways.
I mean, I think, he's more maybe nurturing than I am. I am not a super nurturing, lovey-dovey person. I show love and care in different ways. And for me, it's actions such as, doing your paperwork, making appointments, being there, all of that. Peter was bringing me coffee every morning. I, in preparation for surgery, I had, friends gifted me a mini fridge for my bedroom that replaced my nightstand, and he kept it stocked for me, like things like that. So we both were caregivers in different ways because we're different people. I mean,
Right. And everybody does it differently.
yeah. So I mean, caregiver is where I felt more comfortable, where I felt more in control, where I felt like I could do something and make a difference, and be helpful. Patient, I felt a little lost. I mean, I felt a bit lost. I felt like, I don't know. I just felt lost. So definitely more comfortable. And I don't want to be in either role.
Right.
I will obviously, but like, caregiver is definitely where I felt more helpful, more comfortable, more useful, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we got on, and, different people have different personalities and different strengths and stuff. And, for me, I felt more in control as a patient
Yeah.
because I knew what was going on. I knew what I needed. I could control what I could control. And as a caregiver, and my husband especially felt this way, he felt very helpless. Like he couldn't take away my pain. He couldn't fix things, and men are fixers. He
Right.
couldn't do those things, and he felt very helpless. And I feel like that's kind of the way I feel as a caregiver too. It's like I want to do for you, and I can't
Right.
fix the problem. So
Right.
I say all the time, I would rather be the patient than the caregiver. I think I'm better suited. Not that I want to be sick, but I'm better
Right.
suited in that role because I am very nurturing, but I'm a doctor by trade. So I'm very much like, okay, what do we need to do, and how do we get you up and going, and versus what can I do for you, and how can I take care of you? So I get that kind of nurturing thing. I said I was designed to be a doctor, not a nurse.
I think too, as a patient, I felt like a little bit, avoiding it. Like, I was avoiding, doing that paperwork was an avoidance because I had to write down what was wrong, what was going to be happening to me. Where, as the caregiver, it's slightly removed. I mean, it is removed. I mean, he was the one going through it. I wasn't. So it was more easy for me to talk about it, to write it down. Where when it was me, it was harder to talk about. And that's, again, my personality. I come from a family where we don't talk about things, and especially it was such a, intimate's not the right word, a personal cancer. Talking to my dad, for example, and my dad asking me what symptoms I had, and, and things like that. And I was like, oh,
do you really want to know, Dad?
Right. And like, and my brother, who has this like natural curiosity too, wants to know everything, and was obviously, supportive of me throughout, but he wanted to know things, and to talk about that with family members was quite awkward. But I in the beginning I've gotten a little, still it's TMI sometimes, but but I'm able to talk about it a little bit more. And I also think too, talking to my girlfriends about it, one of my girlfriends asked me, like, did you know something? Like, they always say, like, women's intuition or something. Like, did you know something was wrong? And I remember that I did. And again, part of, I think, why I avoided going to the doctors, that after the holiday rush was over, I still waited a few months. But I remember being in the shower once and like crying because I'm like, something is wrong. I know this isn't normal. Something is wrong. But I played the avoidance game, and I'm like, if I don't do anything about it, maybe it'll go away. So as a patient, I think I fell into that a little bit more
Gotcha.
than where caregiver. If I wasn't doing it, I don't know if it would get done. And
Right.
it was important for me to get stuff done for Peter. And that makes sense.
No, that's really good. That really gives a good kind of the ins and outs of both sides. And, we play to our strengths and we have to do what we have to do. And it's good to know kind of what we're better
Better.
at doing. Hopefully
Yeah.
we don't have to experience either side. And it's good to know like, hey, I can do this and it's all good. So
Right.
all right. Well, Renee, thank you so much for your time today. This has been wonderful. Hopefully you get your genetic testing back soon and it comes back definitely negative for Lynch syndrome. And that's one less thing that you have to worry about, going forward. But this was a great conversation and I loved kind of hearing about both sides. And I'm so glad that everything is back to health and you're doing lovely and right now cancer free.
Yes, thank you so much, Melissa. I really appreciate it. It was great chatting with you and hearing, your stories as well and everything. And yeah, look forward to watching your podcast even more.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye bye.